Hey everyone, it's Argonath here from The Right Way, and we've got a verdict in the Kyle Rittenhouse um, trial. So if you're not from the US, I'm in New Zealand, so I've been following it reasonably closely, but I haven't been watching the trial or anything, and he has been found not guilty on all counts. And in my layperson opinion, I'm not a lawyer or anything, I think that the right verdict has been found. There were 12 people in the jury, so if 12 people found him not guilty on all counts, then that seems pretty fair to me. From the evidence that was given in the trial and so on, as a layperson, it really did seem like a textbook case of self-defense, and it should never have actually gone to trial. The prosecutors should have seen that it's a textbook case of self-defense and knew that they weren't going to win it. But as you know, because it happened during some riots where people were writing about a black man who was shot and became paralyzed, it became a political thing, and it was basically a political trial that they had to go through with it because they probably had political pressure from the top, or they were too afraid about what would happen because all the left-wing nutjobs will all go out and protest and riot again. So the nearly all-white jury deliberated homicide charges against the Illinois teen in the shooting deaths of two men at 2020 protests in Kenosha, Wisconsin. So this is so disingenuous. I think this is NBC News. Why do they have to mention it's an all-white jury? Doesn't make any difference what the race of the jury is, because the trial did not involve any non-white people. Right? The defendant was white. The people that were shot were white. So there was nothing to do about race in this particular trial. But because the outcome doesn't fit the left-wing narrative of these news so-called journalists and news websites and news companies, they have to try and make it about race. So that's why they put all white there. You didn't need it. You just go, the jury deliberated. You don't need to say all white. So let's have a look what else they say. So Wisconsin jury on Friday found Kyle Rittenhouse not guilty on the fatal shooting of two men during the protests in Kenosha last year, capping a trial that touched issues on gun rights and race. Again, bringing race into it. He was there to provide support for the people's property and also provide medical assistance because he was an EMT person. He was not there to blatantly shoot non-white people. Rittenhouse, 18, from nearby Antioch, Illinois, was cleared on all 5 charges relating to his actions during the protest over the shooting of the black man Jacob Blake. Rittenhouse was charged with reckless homicide in the slaying of Joseph Rosenbaum, 36, and intentional homicide in the death of Anthony Huber, 26. He also faced attempted intentional homicide for severely wounded gays Grosskreutz, and 2 counts of recklessly endangering safety. So let's talk about the happiness of Rittenhouse and the defence attorneys. Obviously they're going to be happy. And then we get to all of the things about the people who didn't get their way. The jury of 7 women and 5 men deliberated for about 25 hours since Tuesday morning, and Richard said he was fearful the long talks meant a compromised set of verdicts would send his client to prison. I think what happened was they took their time, even though they might have thought it was a clear case of self-defense quite early on, because they knew that if they came back in just a couple of hours, then it would just blow up in their faces and everything. So basically they took their time, really went through all the evidence. They knew it was a very high profile case and they didn't want to get anything wrong, and so that's why I think it took a long time for the verdict to come out, and they eventually came out on the right side of justice. Basically Rittenhouse was attacked by these people and it was a clear case of self-defense. If any of you say that it wasn't self-defense, did you actually watch any of the trial or read some of the unbiased reporting? A lot of the mainstream media were very biased because they came out very early before the trial that he was a white supremacist and he was there to shoot up people, and so they had to carry on that narrative because they couldn't change it, and it feeds into all the violence that's happening in the US because people will now think that Rittenhouse got away with murder because of the narrative that the mainstream media is actually putting out there. Whereas if they just reported the facts and didn't give their opinion, then it wouldn't lead to further violence. So the Kenosha County District Attorney's Office asked community members to continue to express their opinions and feelings about this verdict in a civil and peaceful manner. Well, we'll see what happens. Currently at this stage, there hasn't been any reports of violence or protests, but that could be just people are still organising things, so I guess we'll have to wait and see. But let's hope the left-wing nut jobs accept the verdict with some grace, because it was made by a jury of 12 people, not just a single person. While we are disappointed with the verdict, it must be respected. We are grateful to the members of the jury for their diligent and thoughtful deliberations. The community has endured so much over the past 50 months, and yet we remain resilient and strong. So most of the rest of the article is from people who were against Rittenhouse. So no verdict will be able to bring back the lives of Anthony Huber and Joseph Rosenbaum or heal Gage Grosskreuz's injuries, just as no verdict can heal the wounds of trauma experienced by Jacob Blake and his family, ever said in a statement after the verdicts. I've seen the pain and frustration of so many, and we must remain steadfast in our commitment to ending violence in our communities. President Biden urged Americans to accept the verdicts and remain peaceful. Biden is an utter hypocrite, because earlier on he labelled Rittenhouse as a white supremacist as well. So we'll see this in a couple of other articles that I've got to that. He is an absolute idiot, and I feel so sorry for America to be lumbered with that left-wing idiot. Alright, so let's have a look at a couple of these other articles here. So this is from ABC News. Kyle Rittenhouse acquitted on all charges. The jury deliberated roughly 26 hours, so they took their time to correct the right thing. So just normal stuff that we kind of talked about before. If we get to the bit that I want to discuss. So there's only a little bit about the verdict and the trial, and the rest of it is just all the left-wing narrative, right? All about the parents of these other people and so on. So of course they're going to be against Rittenhouse, so the rest of the article is all about this sort of thing, right? Huber's parents, Karen Bloom and John Huber, said they're heartbroken and angry by the acquittal. Today's verdict means there is no accountability for the person who murdered our son. It wasn't murder, it was self-defense, lady. You can take it however you want. Were you actually there at the trial? It sends the unacceptable message that armed civilians can show up in any town, incite violence, and then use the danger they've created to justify shooting people. It wasn't just any town, his parents live in the town. So maybe he went there, and he doesn't live too far out of the actual town itself. He's lived most of his life in that particular town. He wasn't inciting violence, he was helping people, and then he was attacked by these left-wing nut jobs, right? Obviously they're going to say these things because they're the parents. They blinded by being parents of this person. No reasonable person viewing all the evidence could conclude that Mr. Rittenhouse acted in self-defense, they said. Mr. Rittenhouse came to Kenosha armed to kill. Actually, he didn't come to Kenosha armed to kill. He got the gun in Kenosha. He didn't bring it into Kenosha, right? He didn't bring it into the town. Kenosha police encouraged him to act violently, and our son is dead as a result. They did not encourage him to act violently. There was no evidence brought up that the police encouraged him to act violently. Obviously, these people are hurting, but they're blinded by the left-wing ideology. And this article just keeps bringing this up, right? They're still taking this left-wing ideology. While today's verdict may mean justice delayed, it will not mean justice denied. I don't know how you're going to get more justice, because he can't be tried again on these particular charges, right? President Biden said in the statement, so we talked about that before. He went on, I remain steadfast in my commitment to do everything in my power to ensure that every American is treated equally with fairness, dignity, and under the law. Well, it was, and he was found not guilty. So it talks about what he talked about in the defense trial, so I'm not going to go over that. That's been said many times forward. And then it talked about what actually happened and so on. So again, I won't be talking about that. So lead prosecutor Binger said in the statement, while we are disappointed with the verdict, it must be respected. Well, of course it must be respected. We are grateful to the members of the jury for their diligent and thoughtful deliberations. Um, Wisconsin Lieutenant Governor Mandela Barnes said that we have seen so many black and brown youth killed, only to be put on trial posthumously, while the innocence of Kyle Rittenhouse was virtually demanded. It wasn't demanded by the judge. This Lieutenant Governor is an absolute idiot. Again, bringing up race, bringing up the sense that there was some sort of deal between the judge and the defense attorneys and so on. That is utterly ridiculous. You've got no evidence of this, and again, the left-wing nut jobs in politics keep pushing this, and you keep dividing America and bringing violence. So keep going on about all of this stuff as well. So let's go to the Daily Mirror, and they've got some really interesting things about what was said before the trial and how people set out to taint Rittenhouse as some sort of white supremacist and terrorist. So then Democratic President Joe Biden tweeted a campaign video depicting Rittenhouse as a white supremacist. PolitiFact inaccurately reported that the teen violated the law by carrying a rifle in Wisconsin. That charge was thrown out because he did not break the law. Esquire described Rittenhouse behavior as tourism. The Intercept referred to former youth police cadet as one of the several apparent white supremacist defendants. Republican Representative Ayanna Pressley accused Rittenhouse of being a white supremacist domestic terrorist. The View's Joy Behar echoed the oft-repeated falsehood that the teen illegally crossed state lines with a weapon. He did not. He got the weapon in the state, in the city, and he was legally allowed to carry it. Republican Representative Ilhan Omar declared Rittenhouse executed 2 people in Kenosha. No, he was found not guilty of that. The chairman of the House Democratic Caucus called to lock up the Illinois teen even as this trial was still underway. MSNBC's Joe Scarborough falsely claimed that the 17-year-old mother drove him across state lines to Kenosha. Right, so this is all the left-wing narrative that people put in before the trial to try and taint the trial, and if it didn't work out, to further divide and bring violence to America. All of these people should be bloody sued by Rittenhouse because they're doing him an injustice. So Rittenhouse may be justified in asking that. So where do you go to get your reputation back? Kyle Rittenhouse may be justified in asking that question after he was found not guilty on all charges. If one had listened to some of the most prominent voices on America's political left over the last 15 months, they may understandably be shocked by the jury's decision. Yeah, so if you only listen to all of the left-wing politicians, all of the left-wing media, they're all pushing out the same narrative, then of course you're going to be shocked that he's found not guilty, especially if you've never actually watched any of the trial or read any of the unbiased commentary. Because that's not the story of what they were told. According to Joe Biden and the Progressive Squad, so that's a group of women in the Democratic Party, and many in the liberal media, Rittenhouse was a white supremacist, a domestic terrorist, a vigilante, and a cold-blooded killer. Congressman Hakeem Jeffries, the chairman of the Democratic Caucus, apparently didn't think a fair hearing was even necessary. Lock up Kyle Rittenhouse and throw away the key, he declared on Twitter as the murder trial was underway. That is absolutely disgusting. All of these left-wing politicians are absolutely trash, garbage human beings, and they have no sense of fairness for someone that's going on trial, especially when it doesn't fit their narrative. Now, in the aftermath of the verdict, there are calls from across the political spectrum to recognise that an 18-year-old was potentially smeared and many misled by the most influential people in America. And there are also idiot celebrities like basketball players and actors and so on, also pushing the same narrative, but they'll never put in a retraction about what they said. Don't forget the candidate for the US president himself last year prior to the election called Kyle Rittenhouse a white supremacist, said David Hancock, a spokesperson for Rittenhouse. Joe Biden called him a white supremacist. That is appalling. I can't even gauge how wrong that is, he said in a reference to a 2020 Biden-Harris campaign video. So an investigation by the Anti-Defamation League appeared to back up Wendy Rittenhouse. The ADL reportedly telling CBS News that they found no indication of Rittenhouse's social media footprint had any connection to extremist groups. If there was any connection he had to any sort of white supremacist group, it would have been brought up in the trial, because that would have been a massive feather in the prosecution's bow to be able to say that he was a white supremacist, but because there was none, they never brought it up in the trial, right? So of course he's not a white supremacist, otherwise they would have brought it up in the trial to bolster the evidence against him. Ah, man. So here we go. Here is a really good set of things that were said, lies that were told about Rittenhouse. Lie. Representative Ilhan Homer claimed that Rittenhouse executed 2 people. Truth. The prosecution only charged Rittenhouse with 1 count of first-degree intentional homicide, for which the jury found him not guilty. Lie. Representative Ayanna Pressley tweeted that the Rittenhouse is a white supremacist domestic terrorist. Then candidate Biden also suggested that the teen was a white supremacist. Truth. Anti-Defamation League reportedly determined there were no connection to extremist movements on Rittenhouse's social media, as said before. Lie. The Intercept referred to the teen as one of several apparent white supremacist defendants in an article exploring the explosive rise of organized white supremacist extremism in the last decade. Truth. The phrases white supremacist, extremist, racist, or domestic terrorist were not uttered once in the prosecution's closing argument because they didn't have any evidence to back that up. Lie. PolitiFact reported that it was illegal for Rittenhouse as a 17-year-old to carry the Smith & Wesson MP15 used in the shootings. Truth. It was not illegal for Rittenhouse to possess the rifle under state law as the barrel was over 12 inches long, so that charge was thrown out. Lie. MSNBC's Joe Scarborough and Rittenhouse's mother said Rittenhouse's mother drove him across state lines as riots erupted in Kenosha. Truth. Rittenhouse testified that he went to Kenosha with his sister and friends. You can see the amount of lies put out by the left-wing media and the left-wing ideologues out there. Lie. The View's Joy Behar claimed Rittenhouse illegally crossed state lines from Illinois to Wisconsin with a firearm. Truth. Dominic Black, Rittenhouse's friend, testified that he stored the weapon used in the incident in his Kenosha home. An Illinois County probe determined Rittenhouse did not travel across state borders with a gun. Lie. Representative Jamal Bowman alleged that Kenosha killings were part of a plot to spark a race war. Truth. This allegation was never backed up reporting or brought up by the prosecution in the course of the trial. Again, if there was any truth to the matter, they would have brought it up to help bolster the prosecution case. Right, so I'm not going to carry on in the article, but we can just see the amount of lies that were perpetrated by the biased, trash, left-wing media in America. And we can see the same sort of reporting in New Zealand for other types of things going on in New Zealand. Just don't trust any of the mainstream media. You need to do your own research. Anyway, I'm glad that Rittenhouse has been cleared of all counts, as in my opinion it was a clear case of self-defense and it should never have been brought to trial anyway. Let me know what you think in the comment section, whether you're for Rittenhouse, whether you're against Rittenhouse. I'd love to read your comments. And if you like this video, give it a thumbs up. If you don't like the video, you're welcome to give it a thumbs down. And if you like my content, please subscribe, as it means that the YouTube algorithm will notice my content a bit easier. Anyway, hopefully I will catch you in the next video.